Today we profile Eleanor Josaitis. Let's go back to 1967. She's a suburban housewife, mother of 5, all under the age of 10. Her husband's name is Don. And we experience the uprising in Detroit, famously in 1967, the riots. There is a Catholic priest, bigger than life, Father William Cunningham. He had hair that I would die for. Bigger than life. And he starts Focus Hope to bring the races together to start to heal Detroit. And the first person he goes to ask to volunteer is Eleanor Josaitis. 6 months later, she comes home one day to her husband Don and says, "Honey, we have to move back to Detroit." Friends, this is when all the U-Hauls were going out of the city. No U-Hauls were going into the city. Everybody thought she was nuts. Her own mom and dad took her to court to try to take the 5 kids away from their daughter because she was nuts. One of her brother-in-laws took her to court to force her to use her maiden name so that they wouldn't embarrass the Josaitis name. And Focus Hope got famous. Presidents came, everybody came. Basically, they took people and taught them a craft so that they were able to get jobs as technicians, machinists, etc. within the big 3. Taught them how to fish for life. Then, in the early 90s, Father Cunningham passes. Everybody thought Focus Hope is over, but comes to be Eleanor was stronger than Father Cunningham, and she took over. Anybody that worked for her would say that her definition of retail was when it wasn't free. She was a 5'3" bulldozer going through a field of marshmallows. She was a force unlike any others. She would go to the presidents of Ford, GM, and Chrysler and say, "You see this old abandoned building on Oakmont Boulevard? I need you to buy it for me. And I need it to become a food center or a child care center or a manufacturing plant, an education center. And here's some prints of what I want it to look like. So what I need you to do, Mr. Ford, Mr. Wagner, etc., is buy this building, make it look like this, and then give me the keys." You couldn't say no to Eleanor Josaitis. I met her in the late 90s. One Sunday afternoon, she came to the house. There was a function in the backyard. And the backyard is pretty famous. It's a park. And she was leaving and she said, "Jack, come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. So I went down to Oakmont Boulevard in the middle of the city. And she put me in a van with a few other of her associates. And we would go from building to building and go inside. And when Eleanor walked through, it was like an Oscar night. Everybody in the building had a job to do. It was a performance. It was a performance. And she told me about, the food center and the manufacturing center and the education center and the child care center. And then we jump in the van, go to the next one. And this is a few blocks long. And finally, we come back to the corporate headquarters. And she puts me in the back of the van. And she says, "Everybody out." And then she closes the door and she's got me cornered in the back of the van. And she says, Jack, I wasn't able to sleep last night. When I saw your park and how God has blessed you, that's all I thought about in the middle of the night. And my people here on Oakman Boulevard will never experience that. And then she stuck her hand out and she says, Jack, here's what I need you to do. I need you to make this half-mile boulevard look like your backyard. And she had me cornered. That was Eleanor Josaitis. And over the next 3 or 4 Saturdays, 50 of us from Decision Consultants came. We bought a lot of materials, pulled a lot of weeds, and we transformed stones and weeds into arguably the most beautiful few blocks in the city of Detroit at the time. A bulldozer going through a field of marshmallows. 20 years ago, Mike Feasy, the president of WJR, gave me a phenomenal honor of having a radio show entitled With God Anything is Possible on WJR, the voice of the Great Lakes. The first guest I ever had was Eleanor Josaitis. I was awful. I didn't know how to go to an exit. I didn't have to know how to intro back into the next segment. And back then, at the start of each segment, I would ask or tell the person, here's the 3 or 4 questions I'll ask you this segment. And that's what I did. And each time, Eleanor would say, well, Jack, that's an awful question. Jack, that's not a very good question. Jack, are you kidding me? And then she would tell me, ask me these 3 questions. And then the next segment, ask me these 4 questions. And finally, near the end, I said, Eleanor, what the hell am I even here for? You're giving me all the questions, and you're giving me all the answers. The first guest we ever had. I asked her to write me her philosophy of life. This is from November of 2000. Dear Jack, I'm a firm believer that every person, no matter what their status in life, want the same thing: to be loved, understood, and appreciated. It makes no difference what our skin color, religious beliefs, or national origin, we want to be loved. To make the world a better place, we all have to understand our brothers and sisters and appreciate our differences and celebrate our sameness. You're making a difference, Jack, and we're grateful. Sincerely, Eleanor. That's the story, friends, of Eleanor Josaitis. Thank you for watching. Until we meet again, please remember, with God, anything is possible. Spahom.